Hi everyone, I am going to be making this lovely block here that's in the Star Spangled Rodeo pattern. And I'm going to show you kind of each step as we go using different fabrics because this fabric isn't out yet. So just watch along. The first step is to make the diamond in the square. So with this, we end up cutting our, basically we cut our triangles here from a square. We cut the square in half to make our triangles. And then we're going to end up putting these pieces around like so. Now, when you put triangles on squares, the first thing you have to do is make sure that you put them on opposite sides first, and you want to make sure that you're matching centers. Matching centers makes sure that it comes out more square than, well, wonky. So if you kind of give a little press here and a little press here, okay, you can use your iron if you want a more permanent press, but press your centers here like so, and then we're going to match these centers and stitch along as we go. So I've matched my centers, and I'm going to sew along this side. And then repeat on the opposite side. Again, matching these centers. Okay, we've stitched on both sides, and we're going to press these seams out. Now, at this point in time, you have your choice, and I usually choose to trim my edges right now, trim the tails, just because it's easier when you put your next piece on. I've trimmed my tails, and now we're going to fold this right here on the line. We're going to match our seams up to kind of make sure that we've marked our center by matching our seams. Okay, so we've marked the centers with nice little marks here. If it's hard for you to see on the visual, you can always add a little mark here like I am with my pencil, if that makes that easier for you. And we're going to do the same thing here. Matching those lines. Okay, and now we're going to sew these on like so. Again, matching centers. And voila, you have your diamond in your square. Press everything open, press everything together, and then make sure that you trim to right size. When you trim to square, it's great to use a square ruler and make sure that, the center marks here are lined up with the points in your corner, and trim accordingly. And here's our finished diamond in a square. On to our next block. Our next block is a half square triangle, and we're going to make 4 of these. So to make these, the easiest way to do them is draw a diagonal line on the back of one of these, match up these same size squares, right sides together, and now we're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch down each side. I tend to just turn mine and continue on. I'm keeping my presser foot right against the edge of that line. Now, if it happens to get off a little bit, don't worry. We're going to trim these down to size when we're done. So next step, you can do this with a rotary cutter or your scissors. You're going to cut down the center, just like so. You're going to press these open. I usually like to press my seams to the dark side, and then we're going to trim. When I trim up my squares, I like to use, if I can, the same size ruler as the square. It makes trimming much easier. I put the diagonal line right on the seam and then trim around it. That makes sure that my points stay relatively perfect as I go. And voila, we have our half square triangle. Now we are going to make flying geese 4 at a time. Now, to do this, we've taken our squares from the size of the pattern, and we're going to place them one over the other. Okay, if you want to make sure you can pin these, but make sure these sides line up. And now we're going to stitch down each side. We're going to cut on the line. And then we're going to press these open. So we've pressed these. I tend to press all my seams again to the dark side. I find that pressing my seams all to one side makes better for nesting, as well as kind of makes a stronger seam when you go to quilt. So now we take this piece here, we take the same size squares we had before, and we place this on here like so. And again, we're going to stitch down both sides. Again, you're going to cut on this drawn line and repeat this for your other heart as well. Okay, so you're going to repeat that on that side to make 2 more, but this will make 2 of your flying geese. And again, just trim these up according to the pattern, and you're ready to go. When trimming up my flying geese, I like to again use my square. Some people do like to use some flying geese rulers. I am kind of a minimalist here, so what I do is I put my center line here. So this is the same size block as I want wide, and so the center line goes this way, which usually leaves me 1/4 of an inch here at the top. So make sure you leave that 1/4 of an inch at the top, and then trim accordingly to get to the size you need. And then we trim to the last edge. Now I always trim from the top, meaning I put my ruler on the top and trim the excess from the bottom. That keeps my points pretty straight. Okay, now we are going to put our block together, making sure that we have everything pointing the right direction. So we put all of our flying geese around the edge here. And we put our points in this way, like so. And now I'm going to piece this together row by row. So when you sew these, there's a lot of bulk at this end. So my recommendation is to sew from the non-bulk end to the bulk end, because it'll be easier for your machine to go. Now for the next row. Now, when you sew these two pieces together, you want these points to look pretty perfect here. Now, getting perfect points isn't that difficult, but I'm going to show you a few tricks. One, if your piece ends up like this one here, which is just fine, you want to make sure that you aim at this little intersection right here, this little seam right here, as you sew them together. And then you want to make sure that it does the same on the other side. Now, if for some reason, as I did with this one, they didn't match perfectly, compare your two sides. Whichever side is been crossed over, so this one was the one that was crossed over, it was too deep. Redo it on that side, again, aiming at this, so you'll have two seams, and just pull out the one that's in too far, and then you'll end up with your perfect seams. Don't rip them out beforehand, because then you lose track of where's good and where's not good. Just do it this way. I have pressed all my seams toward my flying geese. And the next step here is going to be to put these together. So by pressing them all towards each other, meaning towards the flying geese, these seams will all nest nicely. Now, if you feel you need to be confident, you can pin here. And what I would also do is suggest pinning here so that you make sure that your centers stay exactly where you want them to be. So usually I would put a pin right through the center there. It makes sure it's through the center on the other side. And that's the one point that I usually, if I'm going to pin, I will pin. These all work together nesting. We'll sew these together next. Now, because we always press to the black, the nice thing is all of these seams will nest as we pull it together. Now, when you start and stop here, these pieces here, there is a lot of bulk right there. So because there's a lot of bulk, you may want to lift your needle and start your seam right here at the intersection. It won't lock your seam, but you can always backtrack over it. But it does make sure that your machine won't choke or pull the material under. So let's pull the next one on. Okay, now we have this all pressed out here. One of the things I do want to share with you is that I did spin my seams. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, you basically make sure that you take out just a little bit of thread here so that you get to the seam. And this way, we'll put this one, show you, it's almost perfect. And you basically spin so that each seam is going the seam allowance is each going in this kind of the same direction, so they're all going clockwise. And this makes sure that you have less bulk here at your corners. Now, unfortunately, you can't do much about the extra bulk here where you have flying geese points meet, but at least you can minimize the bulk here at your corners. And there's our finished block.